Oh gosh, so yeah, so how are you doing, Annie? Have you mute yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. I've just had to rush home from. I work for a charity as well through all what's going on, so I've just literally had to rush home from that. I
Oh
didn't realise how close to the 4 o'clock mark it was. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm a little bit windswept because I've been running everywhere. But apart from that, I'm doing okay. I'm doing
Cool.
okay, thank you. Good to
Excellent.
see everybody.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And so where are we?
I've
I'm
not
going.
seen you in a very long time, Verity.
I know. I know. It's yes, and I've been a little bit. I haven't
I
been
think
post.
London. Was it
Oh,
London where we met?
that was. But that was. Is it 4 or 5 years ago?
About 5 years ago, definitely.
Oh my gosh. That's just scary. Yeah, because when I sit down and I'm like, gosh, I've been doing this for about 7 years, and it's like, no way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've still
We were
got
in that
people.
really fancy hotel. Do you remember that had birds in the reception?
Yeah. Didn't have much to. Yeah, no, it was very dark. I just remember the whole thing being very dark.
Yeah, very
So
dark.
dark, and I wasn't one of my best days. So
Oh,
yeah.
well, from a drawing perspective, it looked spot on. That's what I remember.
Oh, well, I'm glad you thought that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Cool, excellent. So I was just asking at the beginning whether people were newbies to concepts or whether they've got a little bit of experience. And I think we'll probably have a bit of a mix anyway. And what I usually say to people is, I mean, it took me quite a few attempts to get into concepts. And I'd often, when I was going to a graphic recording gig or whatever, sitting on a train, I would sit and tinker with concepts, but it's once you get the hang of it, and I think I put that on here. Once you get the hang of it, it really is. Hang on a second. It takes a while, but once you get the hang of it, it is actually very, very. It's a really powerful app, and I think what I was saying to people this morning is what you've got to bear in mind is what a concept allows you to do, which you can't do in Procreate, is you can edit things down to a single line. So and this is why if anybody has used vector tools like Illustrator before, what you have are your paths and your fills, which is effectively what you've got on concepts. So I'm just going to make sure I've got all my other apps closed down so that I don't get emails or anything like that, or things popping up. And so it's very much you can, the editing capabilities mean that you can do, it's very versatile for changing stuff, or you can build up libraries of images which you can then reuse if you're doing stuff for clients and you just want to, sort of typical things like a light bulb or I don't know, a calendar or that kind of thing, instead of redrawing and whatever. If you're doing some static illustration work, it's great because you can bring stuff in, change the color. And yes, yes, Uti, I'm recording. I was just seeing the chat from, because this morning I completely forgot. So yeah, so it's very versatile. If you find yourself using stuff and you're doing static illustration, you can change colors for clients for their sort of corporate colors and whatever. So what I'm going to do is, we've got the agenda on here, which is I'm going to go through the workspace and then the selection tools. There's also a bit of method in my madness as to the order I do stuff, because I think if anybody has tinkered with concepts, things like brushes and layers don't change that much between apps, although there's certain things you can do, but the selection tools are really quite important, and gestures, which will speed up workflow. So they're the kind of things that I'm going to be going into in a bit more detail. So and I just want to make sure if anybody does join a little bit later, I get a noise, because I think we're probably more or less, yeah, there you go, somebody's just joined, I've got a noise. Where are we? 5 past. I think we can probably get going. So, and jot questions down in the chat, or if you get stuck, I keep an eye. So if you can't follow, if there's something Winnipeg hi, then we'll go back and I'll go back over it. Okay. So, and I'm using the camera so you can see what my hand does, because as I said, hand gestures are really, really key in this. So yeah. Everybody ready? Nice and wide awake. So the first thing I'm going to do, as I say, is look at the workspace, and I will start with what we've got going on in the top left of the screen, because this is effectively your file management. And it's quite important, just so that if you're organizing your images and your work, just to get your workflow going right from the get-go. So at the moment, you've got these little 4 squares, which is a gallery. I've got here concepts classes. So this is the actual project. So if I tap concepts classes, I then have all of the different things that I'm working on. So I might go into a different project, and somebody else is just coming in, just bear with me. And so I don't know who just joined, but it's all right, we've just started. So yeah, so here's your project. So if you tap on this, these are all the different projects that I've got going. So I might tap on another one, and then I have all of the different files that are under that project. So if I look at, so I've gone back to my concepts classes. So if I hit here, these are the files that I have in my concepts class project. So it's project file, and then the next one is the actual layer that you're working on. So if I want to create a new drawing within my concepts class, I will hit new drawing, and you'll see it'll come up as untitled, and at the moment there is no layer label. So I'm just going to give this a title, class 2, I'll call it. I am a real stickler for labeling files and projects and layers, because it just makes life so much easier. So at the moment, I literally only have one layer. So we've got a pen layer here, and I've just realized I haven't done what I did at the beginning of the class this morning, which was to explain, if you have your tools up in the top left hand corner and you want to get them, you'll see I have all of my brushes in the menu bar on the left hand side. I'll explain that very shortly, because I'll go through this bit first, and then I'll just explain how to move and change your menu bar. But you'll see, so you've got project, you've got the actual file here, and at the moment I've just got one layer. So if I create a new layer, you'll see that I get a third column, and this is my new layer. So if I rename this layer, and to rename the layer, I click on it, and a menu will come up, and it's this little icon here to rename. So I'll call it I don't know, new layer, just for the sake of it. And this is how you can see where you are within a drawing, what layer you're on, and what project, etc. I'm in, sorry, I've just got to let someone else in. I am in concepts class, class 2, and new layer. So when I draw on this layer, there you go, I've got a line drawn here. But then if I switch layers and I hit another layer here, you'll see the name of that layer comes up. All right, so that's a little bit about file management. And then if you want to have an overview of what's in this particular gallery, so I want to go to my concepts class gallery, I hit the gallery button, and then I can see the things that, I mean, you know, some little doodly images of which are within that particular project. And to switch between projects, we'd literally just swipe across. So here you can look at different projects. This is just one way of going through projects.
Verity, can I ask a question, please?
You just did, ask another.
Thank you. I'm not seeing, did you create the concept classes as a project
Yes.
first? Because I'm not seeing the same thing.
Yeah, no, because so what you need to do if you want to, how to create a new project is if you see when you're in the gallery view.
Yes.
So I mean, I'll go back to where we were. I'm just going to go to here and just say, I'm just actually going to go back to my concepts class for now, and I select an image, and I'll just re-go through that. So you hit gallery view, okay, and then you'll see a plus button comes up, and so you hit that and you get the option of creating a new drawing, a new section within your current project, or a new project. Okay, so you hit that new project and there you'll get a new project, and then if you hit untitled you can call it new project 2, for example, and you get the option to put your name in, location. You can also tag it, which means if you're looking for something, you can actually do a tag search. I don't actually do that, but that's one way of looking. So there you have a new project, and you already start with one file, one drawing file, and then if you want to add a new drawing, you just add a new drawing, and it will automatically open up the new drawing canvas. And you'll see there I've got new project 2, which was the project I just created, and at the moment the drawing is untitled. So what you do is you touch it and hold with your pencil, and then you will get the option to rename it.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'm going to do now is just when we come to the tools and whatever, and brush tools, because it's probably easier to do it now than later on, is what a lot of you will have is you will have your drawing tools in the top left in a little wheel like this, yeah, and that little wheel is not the most user friendly. So what you do is just on the outside wheel, you just hold your pencil, and you'll see that in the middle you get a little box, and you can see top left orange is there's a box at the top left which is orange. So then you drag, and then you'll see that the orange box moves, and this is where you can move your toolbox to. So I always have it in the middle on the left, and then it will pop up on the left hand side. Okay, and then all the brushes are my favorites, which I will do when we hit the brushes part of the class. So has everybody been able to do that? Yep. All right, so there, yeah, no, mine currently looks like a wheel on the, yeah, so we've just done that.
Verity, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
The way that your screen looks right now, like you can see the borders of your workspace.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, my background, for me to change that?
Yes, that's the next bit I'm going to cover. I'm going to go to the top right hand part of the menu bar, and that's what we're going to cover now. So yeah, and then I see somebody did ask about the little wheel, so we've covered that. So yeah, that's that. And to change the name of the drawing, what you do is you hold, hang on a second, you hold your cursor on the title of the drawing, and you can see there, but I'll just put that again. There you go, I've changed the name. So just do that again, hold it, and then your cursor will appear, and you just change the name. Okay, you can also change the name of the drawing when you're in gallery view. You can rename your files too. So there's always one or two ways of doing it. Okay, so if we go across to the top right and we go to the cog tools wheel thing, this is where we change our backgrounds. Okay, so we can have a custom color background if we want. So again, you can select from the color wheel, or you can create your own custom color, but I'll go on to colors a bit later. So, we might want a pink background. Okay. And then I never change custom colors. And then we can change the size of the artboard. So I might say I want that. Interestingly, it's covered the whole image, which wasn't what I was expecting, because I never change the color of my background. I always use, if I want a color background, I just create it on a layer. So I'm just going to go to transparent. I can't even remember what I had before. Flame white, I think it was. Yes. And I'll also, if you just look there, your artboard size, you can change the size of. And here, I'm going to go back to the 180. But I always, because I do quite a lot of video work, I very often work on 1920 by 1080, which is an HD size. So it just means that I keep everything in perspective. But you can also work on an infinite canvas, for example, which means that you don't have any restraints. And this is what I was saying, I think in one of the chats, the infinite canvas, if you're doing graphic recording, is actually great, because you can just keep working and then park things, but you can still park even if you've got canvas size, but you can work all over and just keep going. It's just endless, which is quite useful. You can also do a custom size. So if you just hit, just to show what I did there, I'll just take it back to the 180. So if you hit in one of the size boxes, you'll get a pop-up, and you can use, you can do something for an iPad size, or you can go large format, or social media. So social media, then get your Twitter post, your Instagram story. My earphones have just fallen out. Facebook cover. I wonder if they've got the LinkedIn header, because I can never ever get the sizes of that right. Look, LinkedIn cover, I'm going to try that. But I don't know if anybody's tried using LinkedIn and it never works. Anyway, and also does the infinite size print out well in a larger size? It all depends on what you use for export, which again, I will cover. So because you have a selection when you do an export of an image of the dots per inch that you can use. So you can customize. You can also completely customize the size by hitting custom, and then you just put your own measurements in there. So it's really, really versatile for the sizing. And then I usually have a drawing scale 1:1 and millimeters, and I use graph paper just as a guideline. Some people like a dot grid. Some people like the triangle. Some people don't want anything. They just want plain. But I've just got used to using graph paper. It doesn't print with graph paper. When you export it, you can export it as transparent. But just for me as a guide, it's really useful. And then,
Verity?
Yep.
I just missed how you got to the additional customized options. I have the 4 options, but
Okay, so hit that again. So
yep.
if you just, so you have these options, yeah?
Yep.
So if you just hit inside if you just tap in one of the measurements,
got it.
It pops
Thank
up.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next one on the actual menu of the tools is the stylus. And this is where you can adjust pressure, if you want to include pressure, tilt, tap and hold, and also your pressure response. So you can, adjust the level of pressure and the level of reaction when you use pressure on some of like the dynamic pen, which is pressure, it reacts to pressure. And then what I do is again, looking at gestures, I will very often use my touch with finger to actually select one item or whatever. So you've got options here. It's a case of customizing, but for me, I use the selection tool with a 1-finger touch. And these you'll find your own ways of customizing. And then on gestures, so yeah, you can show your touch as well while presenting, but the main ones are, the 2 fingers. You can enable canvas rotation if you use your 2 fingers, and you can enable zoom. We're all used to doing that. And then the tap and hold I have set on color picker. But again, you might find something else. I just find that if I'm coloring a piece of work and then I want to color another part of the work, and I just want to pick a color using an eyedropper from another part of the drawing, then I will use that. So, oh no, oh dear, I have no idea why that would happen if your settings from the morning seem to have gone. Mine generally stay where they are. So I don't know how, I'm not sure how I can help you with that one. And then the other thing I'm just thinking, if would you save? No, it should by default keep your settings. I'll have to Google and see what that is. So then the other thing is I use for highlighting selections and also enable iOS drag and drop of active selections. This is what you use when you want to move something from concepts into another app, like Procreate, like PowerPoint, I think even Paper by 53, even though it's not by 53 anymore, you can move into. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I always said, check that it's enabled. And then you can also adjust the tap and hold. So when you need to hold something to reach another part of the menu, you can just, it's a similar thing to Procreate when you're selecting layers or with your touch on the screen, you set the time that you can tap and hold for. And then 2-finger tap I use for undo, 3-finger tap I use for redo, and you also have the option of setting a 4-finger tap, which this one is set on showing the color wheel, but I actually don't use it, but just to show you, I mean, you know, 4-finger tap, in theory, there you go, the color wheel will pop up, but you have options of setting a 4-finger tap for something else. So you could show your layers, you could show objects, you could do your tool setup. So yeah, you can select everything. That would be a good one. Select everything I'm going for. So yeah, so they are your gestures. So is everybody following so far? Thumbs up if we're following. Okay, excellent. So we're going to start with something really simple, just because I'm going to show how we use selection tools and the different ways in which you can use them. So I've just set my pencil up to, so I'm using the dynamic pen, but again, we'll go into brushes later. And we actually look at, I'm going to draw just any old line, just a squiggly line, okay? And so what I was explaining about the 1-finger touch is very often if I want to move something, I will just touch it with the finger and I have selected, and we know I've selected it because the bounding box appears with the 4 little dots, and also a little sub menu appears up above it. So you know that that's been selected. So now I can move that anywhere on the screen. Okay. I can also, if I want to, change the color. So I'm going to go and find a different color, and I've changed the color of that. Okay. If I want to, I can flip it on a vertical, or I can flip it on a horizontal. They're the 2 little arrow tools there. Flip it on a horizontal, flip it on a vertical. I can lock it, which means I can't edit it now, and I can't even select, I can select it, but I can't, in theory, I can't edit it now. I've tried to change color and it won't let me. So I unlock it. So that's so you can avoid changing things accidentally. And then you have, the first one is copying it to the clipboard. So if you want to copy this to use in another drawing, you hit on the first double thing here, double sheet here, and you'll see it should appear in the right-hand side. There's a little clip, And that can now be used if you then want to open another drawing. So for example, I create a new drawing and I want to use that in the other drawing. I hit on here and I bring it into that drawing. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the one I was working on. Not that it's any different. And the other duplicate tool is the one in the middle, which has got the little plus sign. And what you can do with that is you hit it. And then if you move, you'll see I've now created another one of them. So if you want to duplicate an object, then that's really useful. Okay. So I now have decided I want to select both of those objects. So this is where we see what you've got selected on your selection tools. For me to select, I just draw a circle round and I can select both. A lasso tool pops up, right? Now, if a lasso tool doesn't pop up for you, there's something that you need to do, okay? So, is everybody, right, okay, so Rosanna, yeah, you do need the, to try with the page. They do let you buy just 1 month, just so you know. So selecting it, Wendy, I literally just, if I just want to select one object, I touch it with my finger, okay. If I want to select both objects, I draw around it with the lasso tool, okay. And that's both objects selected. Now, if your lasso tool doesn't come up, the way you can do select other selection tools is if you just touch the screen and drag down, you will see you will get a little sub-menu at the bottom, and I've got my finger still on the screen, so you should see, and mine says lasso, partial off, include, and all. Okay. So, all right, okay. Thank you for getting to the first bit. And yes, we are recording this afternoon. So right, so I've still got my finger on the screen and I've got lasso, partial off, include, and all. So if I want to change this, it may be that, so at the moment, the partial off means that I can only select the object if I actually lasso the whole object. So I'll explain this. So I've lassoed the whole object and everything gets selected. If I just say do a lasso round the end of one of those lines, it doesn't select. But if I then drag my finger down on the screen to bring this menu up and I hit partial off, it'll switch to partial on. And so if I now do a lasso around the end of that, I select the whole thing. So you can select a line, or if I want to select both those lines and I just want to do it quickly, I just do a lasso around the end of the 2 lines and I select the whole thing. And these things become really, really useful when you've got a more complex drawing and it might be, oh, I only want that hand, or I only want that bit of the drawing. So you just know to draw around and making sure you capture all of the strokes and fills. And then you can isolate, even if everything's all on the same layer. Okay, so when you drag down, but that's if it's already selected, is it? Yeah. So hang on. And you can also, oops, wait a minute. You should find, it all depends. The color picker in alpha will be when you've got something selected. So when you're not selected, you should get lasso, partial on, include, and all. Yeah. So now you've got everything, yeah? So once it's selected, it's harder. You've got your scale and your rotate there, which we're not going into today. So it's when you need to hit unselect and then select your lasso and partial on. And then you also have the option to include just your active layer or all layers. Okay, so at the moment, everything, I have ignore and active instead of include and all. Okay, fixed by clicking on it, yeah. So At the moment, we have everything all on one layer. So just to demonstrate how we can use the active and all layers is I'm going to tap on one of the lines and I'm going to move it onto a new layer. And to move it onto a new layer, all I do is, so it's selected, and then anywhere on the screen, I just put my finger on the screen and drag up to new layer. And it did nothing. Thank you. Just try that again. It's not playing ball. What have I done? Have I locked it? This isn't behaving as it's supposed to. Oh, I know why. No, it should be all layers. Right, then let's try this again. New layer. Oh, yeah. There's nothing like live demos, no? So if you didn't get that, I'll just do that again. I will highlight this line. At the moment, you can see it's on a new layer. I'm going to put it back on its previous layer. So I'll just drag it and hover over the layer it was on before, and you can see pens highlighted, and now they're both on the same layer. So this is how you move different elements from one layer to another. So as you can see, this is completely different to Procreate. And this is where things can get you can get a lot faster with your workflow by being able to do this. So I'm going to do that again. It's actually still highlighted. So I'm going to, highlight it again, move it onto that new layer. So I can move it onto an already created layer, or I can highlight it and hover over new layer and create yet another layer. So you can keep creating new layers just by capturing selections and taking them over and hovering over new layer. So you can create millions of layers. But if we want to then get rid of a couple of layers, we can merge down as well, or we can delete a layer, whichever. So I now have two squiggly lines, one on one layer and one on the other layer, okay? So if I then just drag my finger down, at the moment I have all layers selected. So if I lasso here, I select both wiggly lines despite the fact they're on different layers, okay? But if I then go to switch all to active, and then I do a lasso around the two, it will only select the one on the active layer, okay? So that's selection tools for you. I will go into another bit of selection. I might do it with, yeah, what I'm going to do, which is what I did this morning. So I'm going to just move this over. I'm going to make sure I can select on all layers. And then I'm going to bring in an element from, make sure I'm pulling this towards me. I'm going to end up pulling the screen out of view. I'm going to select something from my library, and I will also go into libraries as well. So I've got a little bookshelf here, and so I'm just going to put that there. So that's come in on the layer that was already being, the active layer that was being used. So what I'm going to do is, if I just double click there and highlight again, I'm going to put it on its own layer. Okay. So if I wanted to, for example, just select the 4 books here on the bottom right, I would go in here, I would select partial off, and then literally draw a lasso around here, and the only thing it will select is the books. Okay, so that's how using the partial off works. Okay, because if I were then to go to partial on and do the same thing, what you'll see is it selects everything that the lasso tool touches. So yeah, I'm just seeing what Ferry is saying. Horrible. And layer management is, once you get into the discipline of managing your layers, it does. I mean, and I know it's like when you've got a piece of work to do and you've got to get it out fast, and you just go, oh, I'll name it later, I'll name it later. And then you just sit staring at the screen going, what's that layer? So all clear on the selection. Now there's one other selection tool that I will use on a regular basis, because say I only want to select the green shades of book, okay? what I did here was I toggled through until I got to item picker. Okay. And then what I will do, why didn't it select the shelf near the books? Because on the when I was, hang on a second, I'd like to do like undo. I'll go back to this. So partial on, it will only select what the lasso touches. I need to go to, yeah, I've got lasso. So it will, if you see, it's because I've got color behind. So it's only the lines that have been touched by the lasso. So you've got a fill there and some longer lines which get touched, and it won't select the rest because they are separate lines. They are different. If you see that, that's one stroke. And then this one is a different, I'm going to see if I can select one of these. So it's all different strokes. So it's only if you have partial, it will only select what the actual lasso hits. Okay. All right. So going back to where I was, the lasso tool, we switched to item picker. Okay. And we've decided we're only going to select the green. So what I'll do is I'll drag it and hover over a green, and then I will tap the screen with another finger, and that has been selected. And I'm going to go to another green here and tap, and you'll see now that the two greens are selected. Okay. So I'm just going to scroll across. I've got everybody's facial expressions as well for this. So did you get that? I'm going to do it again. So this time I'll go for the brown books. So I've got this item picker. You can see that little plus sign. Hover over what I want to select and I tap. Okay. And then I tap again. So I've now got the two orange ones, and then I'll tap here. And then I've realized I've actually tapped a green, so I don't want it. So I go and hover over it again, and I can unselect it. So you'll see that you've still got the browns selected. So that's really useful, again, if you're just wanting to select little bits of your drawing, and you, it's just going down to stroke and fill selection. Okay. So that is pretty much it on the selection tools. You've also got the option of doing a color selection, but I tend to use my finger for the color selection. So I will explain that way. But I always encourage people to tinker until they find their own workflow and process. So the next thing that we are going to go on to are brushes and fills and shapes and color. It all kind of merges into one. I'm going to have a glass of water. So I'm going to use, I use dynamic pen a lot. So that I'm going to use that because it's my default. I'm going to get rid of these. And you'll see now I've got several layers. And I'm also going to get rid of my my bookshelf. Now I've just highlighted that with my finger, but I can also actually go to the layer, use the little arrow, and then delete as well. So there's different ways of selecting. It's just for me, it's just the gestures are my way of selecting. So are you all right there, Annie? Are you a pen or pencil layer or a new layer? I just, yeah, just on the layer, the first layer that appears, because there are also ways of creating your layers, which I'll go into as well. So, as I said, I highlighted that using the lasso tool, and I can delete, but the other way you can do it is by actually going to the layer. If everything's all on one layer, you can either just delete it there, or you can also select that object as well using the controls in the layer. But as I say, I tend to just keep my hand as close to the drawing as possible, so I'm not constantly going into the menu. Okay, so right now we've got several layers, but I'm actually going to take it just down to one layer. So we're on a pen layer, and I'm just going to draw a cloud. Something easier, it could be a flower. And at the moment, if you actually look just where your layers menu is, you've got sorting and you've got manual here. Okay. If we hit the manual and switch it to automatic, and then we select the fill tool, which is this one here, you'll see that the layers automatically create a fill layer and put it below your drawing layer. Okay. Because the hierarchy is generally that if you've got a fill, it's going to go below a drawing layer. Okay. So what I do is then I'm on the fill and I'm going to say, right, well, I'm going to fill this roughly. And that's how I filled my flower or my cloud. Okay. Now, at the moment, I've got that tool set on without any kind of smoothing, so it's quite a bumpy shape. So I'm just going to undo it, and I'm going to take the smoothing control and take it up to about 15-ish. And you'll see that it then smooths the lines more when you're filling in. Still wobbly, but anyway. And so that's one way of filling, just by using the fill tool. Okay. Another way you can fill outside of the fill tool is, and what I often do, is if I take the layer that I've just drawn and I duplicate it, okay, and while that duplicated layer is still highlighted, so it's still highlighted, I'll drag it to a layer below or a new layer, and then I'll just switch it, so it's still highlighted, and then I'll hit the fill, and you'll see that I've now got a filled shape. I'm getting nods. So you're not seeing the smoothing options on the side, right? Oh, that's interesting. It's one of the ways of setting up your, it's one of the ways of setting up your menu, and it's all to do with how you, and this has happened to me before because I've lost them, and I think it's just how you set up this little thing. So, because and it's just a case of tinkering with this, and eventually they'll appear. There it's not, because I lost them, but you should just have a play around. So fill option, if you haven't got it, I'll just let you tinker around there for it to see if your smoothing comes up, but you've got it, yeah? Okay. So the fill, right then, if you haven't got fill in your brush selection, what you need to do is just tap on the brush that you've already got highlighted. So in this case, I've got the dynamic brush. If you tap on it again, your brush menu should come up. And in the brush menu, you would then look for the fill. And so what I do is I have my brushes set up, my favorites in my drawing. And I've just realized Ute was saying that her setup is completely different. Sometimes if you've got a project, I sometimes have my project set up slightly differently. So my brushes for one project might be different to another project. And that's why sometimes they might change. And I've just remembered that. So you just select the fill tool and it should appear in your menu. Okay. And so I'm going to go back, I'm going to select my fill layer and delete that. So I just have a pen layer and we're on automatic. So layers, sorting, automatic. If I then hit the fill tool, I will automatically get a fill layer. Okay. And then we draw. And if I'm not mistaken, I think when we use watercolor, yeah, I've just hit watercolor there. And that gave me another custom layer. So just depending on the actual tool you use, it will automatically create new layers for you. So the other way I did the fill was to highlight the actual shape, the outline. It's not, I'm on the wrong place. Yeah, no, so highlight it, duplicate it, drag it to the fill layer, and then just, while it's still highlighted, hit the fill tool, and then it would fill. And you can do this, you can change the pen tool. So I can go up to the pen layer here, and I can change the pen. I can change it to a pencil, or I can change it to a watercolor line, or I can stick with dynamic, or I can do a fixed width. Oops, fixed width. And I can change the thickness as well while it's selected. So there's lots of different things there you can do while you've got your brush or your fill selected. Okay. Everyone still following? Is it still clear? Good, good. So now we've got a few thumbs up. That's good. So the tools I regularly use are the dynamic pen, the fixed width, and the fill. There are two others which I use on a regular basis. One of them is the slice tool. And what that allows me to do is I'm going to just, I'm actually going to delete that fill layer for now, or I'm going to move it just out of the way so we can see what we're doing. Okay, and I'll just resize it and put it there. So the slice tool, actually what that allows me to do is it allows me to slice through a line. So imagine I just want to leave an opening for something, or I've drawn something and I need to take a bit of the line out. I can just literally cut it and then hit the bit I don't want and delete. Okay, so this is how we can start manipulating different parts and segments of a shape. Or it might be that I am drawing this cloud and I only want a little bit of it. Oh, I don't want that flower. It might be a flower, it might be a cloud. I don't want that bump, and I can also get rid of that. So you can start editing shapes that you've drawn. Okay, so I'm just going to go back there, and you can change the thickness of the slice tool. So that's really cool. Or the other one I use a lot is the nudge tool, and the nudge tool, what that lets you do is again play with the lines, and depending on on the setting, on whether you've set it really fine or really broad, you can nudge large chunks of a line. So it might just be, I want to reshape this. Or I can bring it down and take it to a much more controlled line. So you can start redrawing stuff without having to redraw stuff, if you know. So to add those tools, what you need to do is, it may be that you have, I've just seen somebody's asking how to add those. So maybe you have something here in your menu that you don't want to use. So maybe I've got this pencil that I don't use very often. So what, with the pencil highlighted, it's highlighted because that's the color it's set at. I tap it and we go to our drawing menu, and then you should have in here, there you've got the nudge and the slice tool here. It might be, maybe I want to add an eraser tool or something. You've got a hard mask and a soft mask. So this would be for rubbing out. I hit that, and then you'll see that it appears on my menu now, the eraser. And so what I do is with this eraser, I then can erase through bits of the line as well, which is again another way of taking out chunks. I just prefer the slice tool because it's more precise. So you have that, and then the other thing you can use, another tool, is the soft mask, which in theory should allow us to soften a few lines, but I could be complete, yeah. So if you want to create gradients and whatever, this is actually quite a good way of doing it. So you use a rubber, an eraser, in England we call them rubbers. But I know they can have another. And you can smooth out the edge of a line like that. So on the top of the tool, how to rearrange the tools so they are on the top of the tool menu bar. How do you mean? You mean in the order that you want it on here, Rosanna?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so that, I think that's generally, you have to set it up that way. So if you want to use your dynamic pen as your first tool, so you as if, you know, your tool I'm going to use the most is dynamic pen, is you would just select the tool at the number 1. I don't think you can move them around. I'm pretty sure you can't. No, you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's literally, you would just have to set them up that way. Okay. So
Yes.
yeah, you'd say, right, okay, this one I want as my dynamic pen, this one I want as my nudge tool, this one I want as whatever. So that is how you can set them up, and then, you know, just decide what you want. Okay. So that's brushes. And then again, you know, with brushes, it's, you know, I haven't gone into much of brush dynamics, but you've got things like, you've got your smoothing tool, which you can adjust once you've made the line, as well as setting the tool up to be smoother. See, that's a very, very smooth line. So you can either do it before or after making the stroke. You've got your opacity here. So you either use this grid here, but you can also just drag up and down. Okay. And then obviously the size and width. And as I say, you can replace any of these lines with any of the tools that you've got in your arsenal on the left hand side. So that's that. Yeah. So any more questions on brushes, lines, cuts, erasers? Okay. So the next thing we're going to go on to, I'm just going to delete this, is color. Okay. And the color, how we can select colors, and also how we can create colors, and how we can create palettes and things like that. So to change a color of a tool, of a brush or whatever, you probably know that you can hit the actual color and you will get the color wheel, which is the Copic shades for the color wheel. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can actually create your own palettes. Now to do that, there's 2 ways of getting to the palette menu. One is to hit on the star once you've got the color wheel open, and then you'll get the color palette come up. Or if you just actually hold for a little bit longer your pen nib on the color pan, it will come up. So tapping it will bring up the color wheel, but holding it for a little bit longer will bring up the menu. And this is like, you know, these are just things, and once you use this on a regular basis, these things just become second nature. So what we have here, you'll see I've got lots of different palettes set up, and I'm just going to, so how do we get our palettes into the color, the palette bar that we're going to use? So imagine I'm doing a job, I'm actually going to do some of my own work. So I'm going to use, I have a Think Doodly palette set up here. And so what I do is I tap on it and you'll see a black line goes around it. Okay. And I also fancy using something a little bit brighter. So I'm going to use that palette. Okay. So I've got 2 palettes set up, which are going to now be available to me when I go to draw. So I've got my dynamic pen here, and all I do is drag the palette across, and you'll see my Think Doodly palette comes up there, and then the really bright color palette comes up. So I just say, right, I want to do a purple line, and I just select the color. And then I have, so if you're doing client work and you've got their corporate style guide and you have to use their corporate colors, the first thing I do is create a new palette. So to create a new palette, I'll go back into my palettes menu. You can see here, you've got add palette. Okay, and so by hitting that, you'll see I get a blank palette. So just I like reading the comments. So if I occasionally just burst out laughing, it's because I'm reading people's comments. So I have here, I've actually got 2 new palettes. So to add a color to the palettes, you'll see here we've got a color pan at the top. All I do is I drag it, oops, get hold of it, and then drag it down into the palette. You'll see a little green plus sign appear. And right now that palette consists of 1 color. Okay. So to add another color, what I'll normally do if I have the client's corporate style guide, I'll put a number, put their hex, you know, I'll get their hex numbers. And so I'll put 1 in here, D335D, which is actually one of mine. Say done. And there we have it. The color comes up in the top right, and then we just drag and drop it into that palette like that. So I've now got 2 colors, and each palette will take up to 8 colors. Another way that you can change them is by changing the values of the RGB, the RGB values. So these can be done, I can either tap, and I'm going to put, I don't know, 45 there. And so now we've got a color there. I'm going to put 58. I'm just inventing this, by the way. And put 135, and that's done. And then I've made some kind of mushy blue color there. So that's one way of changing the RGB values. The other thing you can do is actually drag. Put your pen in here and drag. And so you can actually change, and you can see in real time how the color is changing. So I've just taken the red up to 255, and I'm going to take the blue up a bit as well. Oh, sorry, the green even. And so we've now got a nice yellow up there. So there's different ways of adjusting the RGB values. Okay, and then I'm going to drag that. Oops, I'm going to drag that into my palette. It's not picking up. Oops. Oh, look, and look what happens if you, that wasn't supposed to happen. Do that again. We drag and, all right, I'm losing control of my Apple Pencil. Right, there you go. I'm gonna drop it in, and I've now got 3 pretty colors in my palette. So I've decided, right, they're my new Think Doodly colors. I'm going to deselect that one. I'm going to select my new set of colors. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the bottom of my menus, and you can see you've got things called dynamic palettes. And this is where you can select the tones. You can do variations on the colors you've used, or you can do analogous, or you can do complementary, or the triads where you've got the, if you know the color wheel, so your complementary colors are the colors which are on the opposite side of the color wheel. Your triads are your 3, analogous is the range, and then you've got the shades and the monochromatics, which I never quite got the hang of what's the difference between the 2, and I should know that because I'm a designer. But anyway, you can do variations. So what I've done here is I've selected shades, monochromatic, and I'm going to select complementary as well. Okay, and so I'm going to select a color on here. So I've got this nice purple, but I actually now want to say I want to use a slightly different shade of that purple. So if I go along here I've got my complementary. So you've got 3 different shades of purple plus the greens, which are on the complementary side of the color wheel. And then if we go back the other way, we have the shades, and the monochrome palette. So you've now got, if you want to do, I don't know, some highlighting or some shadow work on your drawing, you can do it this way. It's really, really useful. Okay. And the other thing that I will usually do, I'm going to show something that's really cool. You can also mix colors on here. So, Yuti has gone, I think so, bye. The other thing you can do is actually mix colors. So I'm going to go to these really nice brights, and what I'm going to do is hold Are you ready, Ferry? Because something else really cool is about to happen. Right, if I hold my, did you see what happened there? If you hold your pen nib on the colours, what you will then get is sort of like mixing. So I'm mixing the red and this funny beigey orangey colour there. And if you then drag your pen nib through these colours, you can select a tone anywhere in that mix. Clever, innit? I said there'd be magic. Can't do a class without magic. So there you go. So I've now got this kind of this nice bit tomatoey red colour that I've created by mixing in between there. Okay. So that's, how are we doing for time? Oh, well, we're okay. We're not bad for time, actually. So that is how we actually mix those colours up. So has everybody got that? So we've created the palettes. We have, oh yeah, I usually have tones of grey in my palettes as well. Again, it's a process thing. It's my workflow. So I like having different greys because you draw lots of computers and office buildings and whatever. So I just have my greys as a palette and I keep it in there. So yeah, so just if I highlight that and then touch on it again, I can get all my shades of pink in here as well. So that's really cool. Okay. So any questions now or anything anybody wants me to go over with the colors?
Verity, I'm not able to change the color palette on the left. So I created a new palette, but how do I get it into the left?
So if I go to the dynamic to the palettes menu, right? So if you look here, what you need to do is to tap on the palette.
Yes.
And then you should get a line around it.
Yes.
And then that should appear in your palettes menu on the left. Okay. Should. So I'm going to click this one called high value here. And then you should see. So you've got to make sure it's got like a heavier line around it. And then it should appear in your palettes. Did that work?
No.
Oh, I don't know then. Are you still on the unpaid version?
Yes.
Yeah, it might be that.
Oh, you know what? There's you can select multiple palettes in the color wheel there, and I think it only allows one to be selected for it to appear. And I have 3 selected.
Right. Normally you can select more than one, but it might be a limitation if it's not the paid version.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're going to have real fun when you pay when you download and have a month's trial on it.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's that. Right then, I'm just going to do one more thing, which I actually didn't cover this morning, and so it's a bonus thing on this, which is to do with selection and whatever. So you can actually, for example, I'm going to use this. I've just brought in a drawing from here, and I am going to go to my selection tool. And what this is actually made up, so the hand is made up of several strokes, okay? And it might be I just want to select the hand outline and use it somewhere else. I can select it. And if you see here on this menu, you've got a link here. If we hit this, what it does is it groups, it should group. Yeah, it groups all of the things that were in there, and I can move them all around at once. So if I then deselect it and I hit a line, it actually selects the whole hand. So that's a very useful thing. It's it's just a grouping function. So that's something else to play with. So it might be that as I say, I've selected one thing, and if I just, rather than having to lasso the whole thing again, the hand at the moment is grouped. So if I then ungroup it and I touch, you'll see that it's now all in its separate elements. Okay, so I'll just highlight it, group it, unselect, but then I just hit one line and the whole thing is moved. So that's just another process thing which would be really useful. I won't put my hand back. My hand won't go. There it is. Okay. All right then, we're on the home street. All right, okay. You want that repeating. So this hand is made up of several different strokes. Okay, I think it's still grouped. Yes, it is. So I'm going to ungroup it. So if I look, I've got this stroke and I've got this stroke. I've also got some fill. So it may be that I want the hand outline, and because it's all separate strokes and I want to be able to move it around and copy it and whatever, I can highlight it using the lasso tool with the partial option turned off. So I've now highlighted this hand and I'm going to move it over here. Now, if I deselect it and then I say, right, okay, I want the hand again. I know, oh, hang on a sec, I'll put partial back on. And I hit one part of it, it only takes the thumb, okay? But I decide I want to be able to move that hand around the whole hand. I'll highlight it. And it might be that there's lots of other layers underneath, so I don't want to be sort of drawing around it very, very carefully. If I then hit the link tool, you'll see it's all linked. So now that hand is, even if I just touch one part of it, it's all grouped. So yeah, you can tell my brain's starting to fry. I don't know what your brains are going to be like following this, but yeah, it's just knowing that you've got a group option if you want to use it. So yeah, I'm just trying to think if I've got, say, I've got I haven't got any. We could do this. We could put the books in here, and I'm just seeing if I can demonstrate it slightly better. I'm going to take these little books here. So I've just got those 4 books. And I want to group them, and that might be I maybe want to repeat those books somewhere else, so I select them, duplicate, and then move them. It's just very handy from the duplication point of view, so I don't have to select the whole thing. I want another set of books over here, so I move them. So it's like literally using a touch to select a line or whatever, but you select a whole selection of lines. Okay. So, did you get that? Now, everybody's there with me. Okay, excellent. Right, we're going to go on to a little bit about workflow and just using concepts, images in other apps. So, I need to make sure that I've got, for example, Procreate open. And I am just going to go here. This was me earlier, so as not to forget. This is where I forget how to use Procreate. We're just going to clear that layer. So I've got something open on Procreate. I can open up my concepts. And this is where we can drag and drop from concepts into Procreate. And I'm also going to demonstrate it with PowerPoint's disappeared. Open that up as well. Okay, so there's different ways we can do this. We can do it using a split screen. I don't know if people have used split screen before on the iPad. So to use just as a demo, I want to share the screen between Concepts and Procreate. I will open up Procreate, move it to the side. So I've now got the 2 apps open and I have my canvas open. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an item here, like this. And you can see it selected. And then what I'll do is I'll hold it and you'll see it pops out Can you see that it's popped out? It's got a little like canvas behind it, and you can pop it out, and you keep your finger on the screen and then just move it over and it will drop into Procreate. Okay. Now, if that doesn't work, what you need to double check is that on your settings menu with your gestures, that you have this enable iOS drag and drop of active selections ticked. Okay. So we'll do that again with something else. So I'll bring just undo that. I'll bring the bookcase over. And so I touch it, drag and drop. And there you are, it's in the Procreate thing. So that's one thing there. I'm just going to close off Procreate, because you can also do it literally. I'm going to highlight it, pull it out. If we do this, hang on a second, this is not playing ball. Come on, play ball. We can literally do this as well, where I just hover over Procreate and then it'll open it up. It's a little bit more fiddly, but it's doable. So you don't necessarily have to have it on split screen. You can just hang over the app, or we're going to go back again to concepts, and we're going to highlight the hand, and I'm going to take the hand that way into PowerPoint again. So this is where all of your gestures. Oh, I don't know the answer to that question, Wendy. When you're in the split screen, Procreate is in preview mode only. Is there a trick to changing that? I don't know. I've not come across that. So I've no idea if anybody else has come across that. I haven't got the answer there. It works, yeah, very works for you. Yeah, so preview only.
What do you mean by preview?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what.
I can see my artwork. I can find all of them and open them, but I can't do any kind of editing, and there's no way to pull up a blank screen or blank canvas.
Oh, that's weird.
And it just says Procreate at the top and then preview.
Oh, that's strange, because I've actually dragged and dropped before from concepts and literally opened up a new canvas, and let's just see. Yeah, I've opened up a new canvas before, because when I'll hit it, I mean, I've already got a canvas open, so that doesn't really help. But if I go back to the gallery, for example, and no, I've got to go. No, what I'll do is I'm going to look into that, and then if I can come up with an answer, I'll find it and I'll post it out to people and maybe do a little demo, because I've not come across the preview side of things, like only coming up with preview. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll play around with it too.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Don't like not being able to answer a question.
You couldn't open up a new drawing in Procreate?
That's what I'm trying to do, and now I'm trying to just close out my my side-by-side screen, and it won't let me close it out. So I don't know.
Right.
I'll play.
Okay. Right. Yeah, because what I did is I already had a screen open, but I've done it where I've literally gone in, opened, and created a new drawing and whatever, and it's worked. So that's really interesting. So now then, the other thing that we can do, I haven't gone into this yet, is the right-hand library bit here on the right-hand side. Because what I'll often do is, if there's elements that I'll use on a regular basis, or if I'm working on a project and I just want things, I want them there. It's a bit like having something on the clipboard, but it's like a sort of fairly limitless clipboard. What I managed to do this morning was actually take everything off my clipboard that's been on there for about 3 years. So yeah, that wasn't in the plan. But what you see here is I've got a few drawings that are already prepared. And how you actually take drawings across to the clipboard, to the import library or export library, is literally, again, you'll highlight an element and drag it across. Okay, and it should work. If it doesn't work, what you have to do is go to your import menu and you go to My Objects and you click on the new button, but I'm not going to press that because I created a new library and I can't get my old one back. So, oh no, wait a minute, is this? No, this is the one I've got at the moment. So yeah, so you hit new and you create a new library. And this is where you can also get hold of object. I never use these, I just draw my own. But yeah, you've got different objects there you can use, but there's some of them are on paid or whatever. But if you want to draw trees, for example, or shoes or fingers pointing, you've got a few little templates there, which are actually quite handy. Because I draw hands horrendously. But yeah, so you've got that. And then you can also import from you can import photos, you can import files, even import files from Dropbox, or even use a camera and create an image or whatever. So, you know, I'll often have stuff that I use as reference. So, right, okay, so yeah, somebody said if they open a new canvas first. So that's probably the best way to go about it. But I have worked it where I've opened a new canvas literally with a picture hovering. So yeah. Okay, so that's your that is your import menu. And what I do is, you know, I might, as I say, I might be doing something and okay, I need that picture of that little lady. I've got it here, and I hit her, and she just comes into the image, and she's completely editable. She's another vector file, and I've just brought her into the layer that was already there. But what I can do is just drag her and pull it into a new layer. So I've got my lady in that layer, and then again we've got all of the options of moving her around and whatever. So yes, that's it's really useful, as I say, if you find yourself using the same elements over and over again for jobs or whatever, you can actually create a little library of pre-prepared elements. So if you're doing a graphic recording, it's really cool because you can just drop them in. So yeah, and nobody sees you. Oh, look how quick she drew that one. But yeah, it's a workflow thing. Okay, so what I'm going to go into now is a little bit about the export menu, which we didn't touch on this morning. So if you look here, you've got your import menu, as I say, you can bring everything in. And then if you go to the export menu, you can actually select what format that you export in. So I'll very often export either in PNG with a transparent background. This is where you select your background, and is there a project? Yes, there is. Yeah, you can. There is a project mode. As soon as you plug into an HDMI connection, then you have the projection. And I'm trying to think what it's like when you're on. I have done it in project mode on Zoom, but I tend to just connect a bit later on. But you can do it in. I think it's presentation mode. There is an option when you are on Zoom, which you can select, but I'm going to double check. Yeah, because I sometimes get my brain mixed up between Concepts and Procreate. But yeah, you can. There is a presentation mode. So you've got JPEG, you've got PNG, you've got vector, the SVG files, and SVG files are what you use. If anybody uses VideoScribe, that's what you can export. But my advice is always to use a fixed width outline, because that way VideoScribe can read the file better. I don't use VideoScribe, but I know that's what you, because I remember going through all sorts of nightmares when I did use VideoScribe trying to do SVG files. If you're an AutoCAD user, you have a DXF option. I very often export to PSD, and you get a layered file. So I have my layers ordered, and then I might do some post-production work or some final topping and tailing in Photoshop. And then you can also export in your vector paths in PDF, which will allow you to work in Illustrator. They don't come out exactly as they are on here because it's, you know, a vector way of translating the file, but you can work in a vector file in Illustrator if you are an Adobe user. I do everything in, I've just seen Annie's question, what do I do instead of VideoScribe? I do everything in After Effects. After Effects and Premiere Pro. I got to the point with VideoScribe just drove me nuts, and so I sat down one day and opened up After Effects and said, right, I'm going in. and so yeah, I've been using After Effects now for I think 3 or 4 years. So, you know, I started off doing everything the long way around, and now I've got quite a lot of automations and things, and I've learned, you know, just through trial and error how, and lots of teenage videos on YouTube. So let's put some loud music on to distract you while you're trying to learn how to do something really complicated. So you've watched them as well, haven't you? So yes, so I use After Effects. So at some point I will do a little intro to After Effects for if anybody's really, really masochistic. After Effects is an Adobe. It's part of the Adobe Creative Suite. I mean, I am a subscriber, and I use all of the Adobe programs because I'm a nerd as well, and I just like sitting at home learning how to use sort of technical stuff because I have no life, and you know, I was in lockdown all on my own. So yeah. Anyway, I'm painting a really sad picture of myself. So yeah, so that's pretty much, I think. So export, yes, I was exporting. Sorry, I digress. Then you have the output details, which so yeah, I always select transparent so that we don't get any sort of those nice white backgrounds and whatever. And then you can actually export choosing your resolution of PPI. So I generally tend to export in 300, but what will happen if you do export to Photoshop, it kind of doesn't export exactly. You have to go in and tweak the Photoshop file if you're a Photoshop user. If you're not a Photoshop user, you can actually just forget what I'd said in the last 15 seconds. So so yeah, but yes, you can export with a resolution if you are using, if you're exporting in PNG, JPG, and PSD. Because if you go out in SVG, you won't get an option for dots per inch because it's a vector file, and the same if you use the Illustrator, you won't get PPI because again, it's a vector. So I think that is more or less it. So if anybody wants me to just go over anything else again, I am quite happy to. And as we know, there is a recording for this one. I'm kind of thinking, is there anything I mentioned this morning or whatever? But I think pretty much I've covered everything. So that's good. I'm going to switch. So you can see that I'm still alive, or whatever. So yeah, so any questions, anything? Oh, look, thank you for, yes, you can save it. I mean, the palettes, if you actually look, hang on a second, they're there. Whether you, I don't think you can export them. That's the only thing. I don't know whether that's what you mean. I'm not sure about exporting. But you all the, I mean, as you can see, I've got a huge amount of things. Right, okay, yeah, for backup reasons, but there are ways of backing up if I'm not mistaken, and I will look into that. And so yeah, because I think I've saved stuff, but yeah, I mean, usually with my iPad backup, I think I've got pretty much everything, but I'll look into that. And then Amy asks, what do I use Procreate and when do I use? All right then, buen provecho, as the locals would say here, Ferry. Bon appetit and all of that stuff. Thank you for joining, and thanks for Little Doodle. Amy, yeah, I will use Procreate if I'm going to do some animation. and or if I'm doing a time lapse or whatever for a client. And occasionally, just if I want to do something a little bit more fine arty, because you've got a heck of a lot more freedom with Procreate for different effects and whatever. At the end of the day, you have limits on kinds of brush strokes and whatever on concepts. So yes, if I want to get a little bit more arty-farty, I'll use Procreate. And also with the animation assist, you know, the stuff that I did in July, I have done small animations and GIFs and whatever. So I'll use it for that. But I would say that 80% of the time I now use concepts, because I tend to do more animation work. When I've done static illustrations like visual summaries, I tend to use Procreate, just because I like using, you know, a pencil or a bit more watercolory, or, you know, I want to smudge, or I want a gradient or something like that. But yeah, and just sometimes just how I feel. So yeah, I'll start on something, I'm like, oh, why am I using this again? But yeah, and also just for you know, the fact that concept is just that little bit more editable. And if I know that I'm going to be using elements that could become useful further down the line, definitely as well, because then I can just change colors and whatever. So yeah, cool, excellent. So any more questions? I've used, right, so yeah, for graphic recording live, so I've used both. No, and there was a question that somebody asked from this morning. I actually got an email. Text on concepts, they only have one font. So the answer to that question is that, and concepts do say, you know, that if you look in the Q&A on their website or on their app or whatever, when will we have fonts? And it says it's coming soon. So it may be a bit like Procreate, because Procreate took ages to do fonts. So no, that is one of the limitations of concepts, is that you don't have fonts. But I tend to put anything text-wise. If I do videos, I'll add them in After Effects. So graphic recording live, I've used both, but what I've found is, because what I'll often do, you know, if it's a webinar or something like that, I tend to show my work afterwards, but then I'll say, right, I will, you know, you'll get the finished piece later. And for post-production and for any tweaks, concepts is easier, because you don't have to necessarily redraw stuff. You can just pick something up and move it or nudge it, or, you know, just it's easier. I find it just that little bit more fluent. But again, it depends on the effects. If you want some really nice colored pencil effects and whatever, you are limited again. But the last one I did back in July, I think I didn't do any in August. No, it was on concepts. So yeah, but then I've done a few on Procreate as well. So yeah, whichever, I think it just, whatever you feel comfortable with. And I think I said that the beauty of using concepts is, you know, I could have an infinite canvas and I might have drawn something and I'll put it up here. Oops, no, I didn't get the whole lot. But, you know, I've done this and I've got that up here, and then I've done some text here, and I can move stuff around, and that's a heck of a lot more, the workflow is quicker. So yeah, and the result as a vector drawing is quite nice. Because I did a big graphic recording about just under a year ago, and I did it in Procreate, and then the client said, oh, what we want to do is make it into a mural made of vinyl. I had to redraw everything in concepts. So, and I was thinking of actually hand painting it on the wall, so just because it's actually here where I am, a 5-meter wall. Well, actually, what do you reckon if we just hand painted it? I'm like, wasn't that my idea in the first place? So yeah.
Yeah, Verity kind of relates to my question. When you import a Procreate drawing into concepts, would then the concept drawing become individual strokes that you can edit, or is it a one image?
It comes in like bringing a photo in.
Okay.
It's the same vice versa as well. You're going to get, it's not going to convert. That's the only thing. So I mean, I'll often bring in a Procreate image if I want to trace something. If it's drawing, I've already, you know, like I did there. But no, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, you can do that in Illustrator. You can take a Procreate drawing into Illustrator and you can use the trace tool, but that's a whole nother ball game. But no, it doesn't do that. That would just be brilliant. So yeah, excellent. So I will save the recording and get that out to people probably sometime tomorrow. And just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining me. I really enjoy these sessions. You know, it's my pivot. I've done my pivot. I'm going to do. And I think also this group is just so nice as well. So it's nice being able to share skills and whatever. So yeah, thank you, everybody. And everybody have a great afternoon, morning, and whatever, because I think most people are actually over in the States and Canada, I think, on this session. So yeah. Have a good evening.